welcome to the Frontrunner Zoom workshop call. If you've been around Frontrunner for a while, we try to do these once or twice a month, right? Because Frontrunner's commitment to you as agents is not just that we would give you a great platform to help run the day-to-day of your agency, but it really is to get to know you and to partner and to sort of walk life with you as you execute your day in and day out. So part of that is we want to bring on people who do some things really, really well and let you just hear from them. And so the goal of today's call is just to encourage you, is to give you some tidbits about to some things that maybe you've been frustrated about. So whether you're joining us live or whether you're joining us on demand 3 months from now, we know that this statement's probably going to apply. Recruiting, training, and retaining team members is hard. It's hard, isn't it? And in fact, almost every agent that we talked to, and we talked to hundreds of agents with over 700 agents using Frontrunner, almost every agent says the same thing. Mm-hmm. It's tough. And in today's world, it is even a little bit tougher. And then even as we continue to walk through a pandemic, it even adds to the challenges. So this call today is to just give you some encouragement about recruiting, training, and retaining team members. And then we're going to give you some next steps if you want to keep on digging in. And there'll be even a point in the call where we would love to hear from you, right? Maybe there's something that our panelists didn't say that you want to add to the conversation. That would be really, really great to hear from you. So without further ado, I do want to introduce our panelists. We've got 2 on right now. We're going to be joined by a third in about 15 minutes. So the first panelist I want to introduce you to is Jennifer Jacobs. On my screen, she's to my right. Jennifer, wave at us, say hey.
Hi.
Yeah, Jennifer and I were just talking. She is 15 minutes down the road in LaGrange, Kentucky, which is just right outside of Louisville. And so Jennifer, I'm so excited to have her. She has a history of long tenured team members. And here's what I love about her agency. It's not in a big metropolis. If you've ever been to LaGrange, metropolis is the antithesis of that, right?
It's a small place for sure. So we're kind of like a bedroom community of Louisville. A lot of people want to live in our community for their kids to go to school in Oldham County, but they don't really do a lot of business in Oldham County. They just kind of live here. So they go to Louisville for a lot, and they're just really here for the schools. So kind of like a lot of the suburbs of Chicago, I would guess. So.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's great, even though not in a metropolis, still has really great production numbers, has team members that produce and team members that stick around. So I want to ask her about some of that as well. And she is a Frontrunner subscriber as well. She's been with us for a long time. And so we're grateful for that. So that's Jennifer. Also want to, I guess, introduce our second speaker is Steve Suggs. And so Steve, say hello. Hey, Steve.
Hello. And thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Hey, man. Many of you know Steve. Steve has this great book out called Can They Sell? And he's a part of Sales Managed Solutions. And again, many of you know Steve as he coaches and trains and equips, agents and businesses around the country. A speaker at conferences. And I mean, Steve, you and I don't know each other closely yet, but man, people say great things about you. So I'm so glad to have you about how you've helped people change their businesses, about how you've helped train people and their team to be amazing salesmen, and even to evaluate the current sales team that they have. So, Steve, welcome. We are so excited to have you.
Yeah, thank you very much.
And then our third speaker, who will be here in just a few minutes, he was. Again, by the way, big thank you to Steve and to Tim, as they just agreed to be on today. We did have another speaker who unfortunately could not make it today. So big thank you to Steve and to our third speaker as well, Tim Linden, who is with Your 212 Coach, who again, has been in the business for years and years, coaching agents and business folks all around. He is the master behind the Agents Convention, which is going to be, is it next week? That's next week in Nashville. So anyway, we're going to be excited to have Tim when he jumps on. So, okay. So Jennifer and Steve, again, thanks so much, you guys, for coming. I've got just some questions, and we're going to sort of break up the conversation in 3 parts, actually 4 parts, if that's okay. We want to sort of get a little bit of background on you. And then we're going to talk about 3 different sections of looking at team members, right? So the first is some insights that you're going to have on, recruiting team members. And I'll ask you some specific questions on those. And the second is going to be about the training aspect, and, how do you train, and how do you see effective agents train team members? And then the third is going to be about retaining team members, right? After someone's put in all the effort and heart and, money, training team members, how do you see people develop cultures where their team really wants to stick around? So that'll be sort of our roadmap if that works for you guys. All right, so I will start with Steve here. So Steve, if you don't mind just doing a quick background of yourself, possibly of your book, of your organization, and kind of your work around the country as you work with agents.
Sure, yeah, I'd be glad to do that. My company, Sales Managed Solutions, I'm a partner. My business partner, Lance Cooper, started our company 38 years ago. I joined him 20 years ago. Prior to that, I spent 15 years at Northwestern Mutual. I was an MDRT producer there, and I was also a sales leader. Toward the end of my career at Northwestern, Lance and I discovered that there was this big gap in the marketplace of a best practice recruiting system. If you were to Google hiring salespeople, even today, you're mostly going to find personality assessments. And we discovered through a lot of our research that personality, if a person has the right personality, that's only about 35% of what's needed to be able to do a job. And so we went to work and discovered what are all the other dimensions that need to be measured when you're hiring salespeople. And so we put together this system that helps individuals. We train them on all of those components, on what to look for. And so for 20 years, I've been doing that. For the past 10 years, I've been working with State Farm, and we've got a lot of agents using us. So I have about 50 calls a week with agents, and every day we'll look at somewhere in the neighborhood of about 50 different applicants. So get into a lot of in-depth discussion about once you know what to look for, we use tools to compare the results of those tools with the applicant and help them understand, is this somebody that you should move along in the process?
Well, great. So kind of the thing I heard, and we're going to dig a little bit more into it in a minute, Steve, is don't just take someone's sort of gut feeling when it comes to recruiting. You want to compare that with data, right? I mean, or,
yes.
or some assessments and kind of marry the two. Is that an accurate summation there?
Yes. Yeah. The brain is broken down into 2 parts. There's the emotional side, and then there's the logical side.
Yeah.
The way you engage the logical side is with information. And so first of all, you have to know, well, what information do I need? And then once you know what information you need, then you have to have tools to measure that. So with a personality tool and an intelligence test tool and the right interview questions to measure the other behaviors, you can, if you take the time and discipline to take candidates through those tools and then pay attention to the information, it engages the logical side of the brain and the emotional side of the brain. Without the logical side, the emotional side takes over. And we have a tendency to, since we're human beings and we're attracted to other human beings, we find all the reasons we want to like somebody. And what I like to say is you need to like them for the right reasons. And the only way to find out whether or not you should be liking them is to have tools and processes in place, so you're really looking in depth at the things that matter.
Yeah, awesome. I love how you just said that. There's the logical and the emotional side of things, right? You could use that for recruiting. You could also use that for finding who you're going to marry, who you're going to date. That principle applies to a lot of things. So investments, anything. Yeah. Bitcoin. Dogecoin. So anyway, Steve, thank you so much for that. Jennifer, so tell us a bit about you. Tell us about your background, kind of what drives you, about, tell us about your agency, when it started, maybe a few little things, maybe about some big new things in your family recently, all that good stuff.
Sure. I just hit my 4-year anniversary yesterday as a State Farm agent, and I was a new market agent when I opened. I actually was recruited by State Farm from Kentucky Farm Bureau, so I was at the other farm, is what I always joke and say. So I'm really more on like my 7th year of new market because I started over, but like I said, we're in a small bedroom community outside of Louisville. We're not really in the metro area. I have 2.5 team members, and I have some new ones coming on board. I'm on track for Chairman's Circle this year, which has always been a really big goal of mine. So we're very excited about that. Um, I feel like I'm forgetting. I have a 3-month-old. I just had a baby this year. So the fact that we're still on track for, Chairman's Circle and all of that good stuff, even though I took a couple months out to be with him, I think is pretty great. And I think it really speaks more to my team and their abilities than anything. What else?
Well, yeah, no, all that's phenomenal. So where you have trained and, are really trained and equipped your team and trust your team to run your operations when, you had a baby, right? And I wanted her to share that because I wanted to selfishly share that I had a baby too 4 months ago. Well, I didn't have anything. My wife did, right? But, we're trying to move closer to prospects. So maybe our babies will be friends.
Yeah, definitely. I think too, to just really touch on what Steve said, I think there is this space that I think agents get into where you're making decisions not so rationally because you're doing it out of desperation because you just need somebody. And the environment for hiring people right now is very different than probably anybody, no matter how long you've been in recruiting. I don't know that anybody has experienced recruiting the way that anyone is experiencing it right now, because it's just totally different. You're playing with so many variables, and honestly, right now the sky is the limit for anybody who's looking for a job because everyone is hiring. And I've always said anybody who's not currently looking for a job is missing the opportunity, because right now you could be a potential candidate for a job that before the pandemic you might not ever have been considered for. So I think your office culture and you and what you can bring to your team member developmentally and just in a culture standpoint is more important than ever right now, because they're looking at, you're not the only person talking to a candidate right now. They're getting multiple offers. Even if it's somebody that you might feel like is mediocre, there's still other people that are perfectly fine with just having a warm body. But being a small business owner, we don't have the ability to have a warm body. It's not good for us. It's a drain either on your team or on your resources. So I think it's really important to still be selective, but move swiftly right now.
100%. So just to kind of piggyback off what you just said, because you said it's more important, and this is so important, family, just to put a warm body in there, because you could actually lose money, right? And training and time and service aspects. So tell me, as you're looking for new team members, and again, as you've got some coming in the process, are there any like specific character or trait elements that you're looking for as you start to look at candidates? Because you just said, hey, we don't want just a warm body. We want somebody specific. Is there a couple of things that you could maybe key us in on things that you look for as you hire the right person?
So when I'm talking to people, if I'm screening resumes, the biggest thing that I'm looking for is longevity. Now that might be pre-pandemic because you don't know what their situation was during the pandemic, and obviously you're limited on the questions that you can ask, but I want someone that stayed a place for a couple of years or more. Now, and that's like maybe they've been at one job for a while, but any job history that they have, depending on their age, obviously, whatever you can kind of gather from the resume, I want someone that has been a place for a while. I don't want someone that's been someplace for 3 months here and 6 months there, and they kind of hop around. Because that to me says that they're just looking for like the next best thing always. They're not probably a very sticky person. So much like I look at customers, I'm looking at team members that way. I want sticky team members. I don't want someone that's going to hop from place to place. Now, early on, I can tell you that was very different. I would meet with somebody and like Steve said, I'd be like, my gut says But in the back of my head, I would know that there was something about that person that probably wasn't a good fit. But in my mind, I was like, well, I can fix that. I can train that. I can whatever. I just kept telling myself that we could get past it. And sure as enough, I would know in my gut that I shouldn't have hired them, but I would anyway. And then whatever that hiccup or hang up with them was that I had in the interview was generally brought to light pretty quickly. And so early on, I did have a lot of turnover because I was hiring people that really at the interview table I knew were probably not the best fit. I want people who are gritty, and there's no real way to measure that. A personality test can tell you it at a high level, it can tell you it, but just kind of talking to people. And when I talk to people about the position, I don't sell the sunshine and rainbow versions of it. It's hard. It's hard. This is a hard business. Talking to people all day is hard. The rejection is hard. And I'm very honest about that. Amber, who's been with me for a couple years, she's a leader in sales in my office, and she's phenomenal at what she does because she was very trainable. But I told her every reason in the book why she shouldn't take this job. And she was like, I don't care. I've decided like this is what I want to do. And so I think selling a very roses version of what we do just sets you up for failure, because then you get someone in there and they realize that it's not sunshine or rainbows, and they immediately start looking for someplace else to be, or they're not as committed. So be careful about how you're selling what it is that you're recruiting them to do. And I'm not saying, it doesn't have to be doom and gloom, but be realistic. And I think that will help you a lot. I sat in on some interviews with other agents, and they're like, yeah, you can make all this money and all this stuff, and that's great. But the person that you're talking to also might not be motivated just by money.
Yeah. Wow. So I love that word sticky. Like we want to sticky people, and people with grit, right? With honesty. And so, hey, on that note, I actually want to ask Steve, as you talk with agents and help them recruit and train, I'm assuming that you advise in a very similar way, but would you mind sort of giving us a peek into, how you advise agents as well as they're looking, right? Because nobody wants an agent that, a team member that's there for 3 months and gone, right? So yeah, Steve, how do you sort of advise people in that way?
Well, in the beginning of the selection process, if you specifically give them the personality assessment, the CTS sales profile, then that's going to give you, it's almost like an MRI of the brain. It's going to show you things about them that you will not be able to see in the interview. For a salesperson, you want somebody who has this high sense of urgency about getting things done quickly. You want somebody who wants to be in control. They don't want to be micromanaged. They can control the sales conversation. And you want somebody who likes to be social. They like to be around people. And you want somebody who has social confidence. So those 4 traits will be a salesperson who will control the sales conversation, quickly move it forward in a socially assertive way. And you can also measure whether or not they're going to get paralyzed by the details. Can they manage their time in a way so that they're not over preparing the quote, talking too much, giving too much information? And you can also measure their sensitivity to rejection. Can they handle getting rejected? And instead of getting rejected and looking at Facebook for 15 minutes, do they pick up the phone and dial it again? And you can also measure their positivity. Are they optimistic? Do they believe that if I work hard, good things will happen to me? So you can get a really quick measure with the CTS sales profile, and then get a measure of their intelligence level. If they're not smart enough, nothing else matters. And so it's critical that they have the intelligence level to be able to do this job. So you can have that, if you have the right personality, again, that's 35%, intelligence is 20%. And then you can look at the resume, and you can begin to put together those 3 pieces. Individuals who have certain personality traits that are not in the ideal range, a lot of times we can look at the resume and we can see the pattern there, because our personality predicts which character traits we struggle with. A highly assertive person can win people over to their way of thinking, Well, a highly assertive person without the character trait of concern for others can run over people to get what they want. Mm-hmm. So the pattern of job hopping a lot of times can be, you can see that in the personality assessment. And then once they get through that initial, those initial assessments, which because of technology, you can give them to them very, very early. So before you start interviewing them, you can have this information sitting in front of you. And then you take them through the process and look for things like honesty, work ethic. Do they care about people? Do they accept responsibility? Are they going to be coachable? Why do they want to do this? Why State Farm? Why insurance? Why sales? Why work for you? And then are they money motivated? Are they competitive? So having structured interview questions, we actually have a questionnaire, and the honesty questions are labeled. This is an honesty question. This is a accepts responsibility question. So when you know what to look for and you have a question specifically for that trait, you're now in a position to interpret, is that a good answer or is that a bad answer? Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of psychology behind reading people during the interview. And the number one thing to have is structured interview questions, specifically tied to the traits that you know you're looking for. And that way, you ask the question and then you just let them talk.
Wow.
Jennifer was talking about selling somebody on the career. Well, there's another psychological fact. The more you talk about yourself, the more you like the person you're talking to. I mean, you've seen this on the movies. You know, this guy and gal, they go out on a date, and the guy sits there and talks the whole time, and she's sitting there rolling her eyes. And he goes home, and his friend says, "Well, you know, how'd the date go?" And she says, he says, "I found the girl I'm going to marry." And then she goes home and says, "Well, how'd the date go?" And she goes, "I'll never go out with that person ever again. All he did was talk about himself." So the more we talk about ourselves and sell the career, the more we fall in love with the person we're talking to. And there's this fine line between helping people understand in a realistic way what this is and what it's about, and then transitioning into the part of the interview where you're doing nothing except asking questions and listening. And so sometimes it goes great and sometimes it's ugly, but you'll get to the truth.
Yeah, but that is so interesting, right? It's the balance between, and it sounds like they work in parallel, right? It is to almost, you're like, you know, as I'm hearing Jennifer, it's like, hey, I found the most effective ways to almost try to talk them out of working for me. Right. It's because I want to be realistic, and I want you to hear this. And then also just doing a whole lot of listening and doing both really, really well. So as I listen to you guys, this is kind of sort of a summary, and tell me if I've hit the mark or if I've completely missed it. It sounds like as you're recruiting people, maybe you're really looking for sort of 3 C's, right? Character, you know, or the kind of character of someone that you want to employ. Competency, right? Do they know how to do the job? Are they intelligent enough to pick it up, or they have the right aptitude? But then that third thing, which we'll talk about later in the call, chemistry, right? Do they fit with our team? You know, do they fit with our office culture? And then being able, as Steve said, to have some concrete questions and processes, right, to sort of work through that. Is that an accurate summary, or did I miss something maybe?
Add a P to your 3 C's, personality.
Personality.
Yeah, because those traits I'm talking about are hardwired.
Yeah.
There are people who are slow and methodical.
Absolutely.
They're introverts.
Yeah.
You can see it in your children. I have two grandboys. One gives me a hug and wants to be cuddled. The other one's like hugging a board.
And it's weird, they can come from the same family.
Oh yeah.
They come from the same family. So, okay. So I have another question for Steve. And Steve, I know you've got to head out here in a couple minutes, correct? And so yes. I want to make sure to honor your time. And again, we're going to keep on going for another half hour as well. So Steve, I do have one more question for you. We're going to stay sort of in this recruiting realm, and then it would be great to have you back on at a different time and talk about the other things too. But Do you mind in your last minute or two to sort of tell us about some of those recruiting tools? I know you alluded to them a little bit a few minutes ago, but do you mind talking a little bit more about some of these specific tools that can help people to recruit great team members? Maybe how your company can come into play with that, maybe how your book could come into play with that.
Sure. Yeah. Be glad to do that. What has become evident in order to be a successful State Farm agent in today's world, you have to become not a master recruiter, but at least have some training and have the availability of resources people who can help you with that. So what we've done is the first thing that we try to do is we try to train. Of course, we have the book. We also have training videos, but the real training comes when I'm having telephone calls with agents where we're discussing live candidates. Wow. And I can get people to the point where they can quickly see this is obviously a person I shouldn't be spending my time with. And this person over here, yes, I should be spending more time there. And the telephone calls sort of tail off to the point of where they're very confusing candidates. But the main thing is just gaining knowledge on what dimensions are important to measure, and then mastering using the tools to measure those dimensions. And then we also have training on where to find candidates. We've got a lot of training on how to develop a proactive recruiting effort so that you're spending time on a daily basis in a lot of different areas other than just getting resumes offline. And then becoming disciplined of following that system. Yeah. So that because in today's world, you have to create efficiencies. You have to have those really powerful screening tools so that you can get people into the process, screen them out quickly. So because 30 minutes of interviewing somebody who doesn't have the intelligence, who doesn't have the personality, is 30 minutes you could have spent online looking at LinkedIn, finding candidates.
That's right.
So efficiencies is critical today. And then gaining that knowledge and mastering the tools so that you can minimize your risk. Every candidate's a risk. What you're trying to do is minimize that risk as you're going into this. Because Josh Bolduc is a great sales leader, and he always says, one bad hire, you should have just gone out and bought a Rolex wristwatch and smashed it with a sledgehammer. There's not a lot of difference. So, wow. All right.
That is very rich. Thank you so much, Steve, for your time. I am so incredibly grateful. Folks on the call, if you want to connect with Steve, hear more about his organization, about how they could help you as well, we just posted the link down in the chat. It's salesmanage.com, in case for our on-demand crowd. Is there a different place that they can connect with you, or is that the best place for them to connect?
Yeah, let me give you a link. You can schedule a call with me using my calendar app. And if you go to salesmanage.com /recruit the best, you can just click on that. You'll see my Photoshop face, and you can right there at my calendar app, you can choose a time that's convenient for you. I'd be glad to talk to you.
Awesome. Would you mind saying that just one more time? And Tyrell on the call, would you mind popping this in the chat, please?
Sure. salesmanage.com /recruit the best.
/recruit the best. Great.
Right. Mm-hmm.
All right.
Very good. And my email address is ssuggs@salesmanage.com.
ssuggs@salesmanage.com. Great. Steve, again, thank you so much. We're going to let you go just because I know you've got other things you've got to get to. Again, thanks so much for joining us as we turn back to Jennifer. Steve, awesome, man. Have a great day.
Thank you. My pleasure. Goodbye.
Absolutely. See you, Steve. All right. Hey, Jennifer. So the question's going to turn back to you. We're actually going to turn a little bit of a corner here and talk about some of the training process, right? Because I know training team members can be taxing, right? And there's a lot of different ways you could do it. So do you mind giving us some insight about how you get your team members trained, right? Because I fully believe that you've had those tenured team members while you're pressing towards chairman circle is because you've got great, well-trained team. And you already alluded to them, because while you were on leave, your office just kept right on going. And really, isn't that all of our goals that are, I'm not an agent. Okay. Like, my common thing I can say is, I think I could be a pretty good team member by this point. But I'm not an agent. But from when I talk to agents, the goal is that when you're away from the office, your office works as well or maybe even better when you're gone. And that's all about training. So yeah, awesome. Would you mind giving us a little bit of insight into how you train, what's your processes that you use? Do you use any tools, that kind of thing?
Sure. So the biggest thing for training process, I would say, is to have a process. You would be surprised how many people don't actually have a set in stone process for training their team. And we all know what needs to get done, and there are a lot of things that you learn by doing, and I tell people that as I onboard them, I'll show you once, you're going to show me once, and then I'll be here if you have any questions. So I'm not a micromanager, so training people is difficult for me, because if I show you once, like, in my mind, you got it, and I want to move on from that, and that's not realistic. So training takes a lot of focused effort on my part, because I move fast, and that's what this industry takes. But having a process, a set process for training is huge. My office has a OneNote, and in that OneNote, it has everything that you could possibly do in my agency is there, with step-by-step guides, and it also includes pictures. So if I died tomorrow, my agency can still run and work exactly as it does today, and no one would know that I died. That was my goal from day one, to get there. Now, you don't get there, in a year. It took me, let's see, I revised this starting in November of 2019. So it's taken me a full year for this to come like full circle in training. So having a training process, and at least it doesn't have to be super detailed, but you should build it out to be super detailed eventually. But the first day I bring people in, I have them fill out this sheet, and it tells me what motivates them, how they like to be recognized, and all of that good stuff, because you think money motivates people, and I've already said that it doesn't always. And if you're trying to motivate somebody the wrong way, then you're really not going to get the intended results from them that you want, because you're not really motivating them. The next thing that's super important to me is I just let them shadow. So they spend 2 days really just shadowing us. We're not really teaching them anything. We just want them to absorb whatever they can, and we're not super intentional about that. So whatever happens in those 2 days happens, and we let them kind of absorb it. And then we ask them what they learned in the 2 days. And then on the third day is really when we dive in to, okay, this is the system, this is how you use the system, and then introduce them to the processes. And I am hugely process driven. I'm not like super rigid about it, but my office has a process for everything, and that's the way we do things. And I think that's what helps my office run the way that it does when I'm away, because it's not questionable. They're not like, oh, what would Jennifer do? It's there, like, this is how I would handle it. And my team is very much an extension of me that way. And we've been together for so long now, it's easy for them to know what I would do, because we've been all together for going on 2-3 years. So
wow.
In Ashley's case, 4 years. So
years. I love that phrase that you said, my team is an extension of me. I mean, I wonder how many of us have thought about that, right? That your team is not just ones who are in your office and selling and servicing. They really, to the community, they are an extension of you, right? So having well-trained, having a well-oiled, process-driven system works, right? It simply works. And I also like what you said, that it's not rigid. It doesn't have to be rigid to be effective, and those are really two different things. So just one more quick question, and then we're excited to have Tim Linden join us. I'm going to introduce Tim here again in a minute. But what is sort of the time? I guess kind of a double question. What's sort of the time that you try to have your team fully trained, and like a team are fully trained? And do you expect them to be sort of get all their licenses? Talking about a sales team in that time frame. And do you make them pay for the licenses? Can I put you on the spot? Or do you kind of take care of that as an office expense?
That's a good question. So when I first started, I paid for licensing and their time for that.
Mm-hmm.
But I quickly realized that that was not the best way to go about it. So now, or at least the last time that I hired a salesperson, they had to pay for their own licensing. And by the time that they started on day one, they needed to have all 4 licenses. So the life, the health, the property and casualty, you had to have all of it and you paid for it. And I really still stand by that. But again, in today's environment, that's a little bit different. So now we've kind of changed it to where you start out as a telemarketer and then we grow you into a salesperson. So we're hiring them with the intention that they're going to be doing sales, but we kind of get to test drive them. So the window on that's about 45 days. So telemarketing, getting people to do activities, is the hardest part of what we do in sales. And I think having them start as a telemarketer and giving a time frame. So at 45 days, we're going to evaluate you, whether we're going to continue this or not. In the post-pandemic world has worked well for me. And I can't tell you how many people, I've had 3 people that we've hired for that position. One, we gave the offer to and she disappeared off of the face of the earth. And that's just the reality of today's world. The second one, on day 2, we were like, absolutely not. And we parted ways. And then the third one, the same thing happened. We did a background check. We were like, okay, here's your start date. And like, they turned into a ghost. We never heard back from them. So it's different right now. But usually, yes. But the intention for the telemarketer is at that 45 days, we'll evaluate, and then we can talk about licensing and going forward from there. And we thought, and I talked to my team about these things again, because they're part of the hiring decisions at this point, because we're kind of a small family. But 50-50. So you put in 50% of your licensing fee, I'll put in 50% of your licensing fee, and when you've been here for 90 days, I'll reimburse you for your half. So that they have some skin in the game.
Yeah.
Because it's easy for you to pay for their licenses and then they disappear right now, and then you're out the investment. So it's just like what Steve was saying, you might as well just go buy whatever high ticket item you want and just throw it in the trash, because it's the equivalent.
It's equivalent. So it's like you get to run them through sort of like an initial test to say, hey, to be a part of my agency, I want you to have these things done beforehand. Yep. And it kind of pre-vets them. And it's sort of, here's what I love. It kind of sets the bar high on your agency. I think we would all, be, benefit to say, hey, listen, we want to set our agency standards high, right? And to be a part of our agency, is a really, it's almost an honor. And so we want to have people say, hey, how invested are you, and how much do you want to be a part of this, right? So, yeah,
it can be a trap if you are all in the beginning and you pay for everything, mm-hmm. because then they really don't have any commitment. And I see new agents all the time who have a team member that they have had that's been with them for 6 months that isn't licensed and can't pass the test, and you're just throwing away money and time on that person. Like at that point, if they've taken the test 3-4 times and they haven't passed, the likelihood of them passing is probably not very high. And what value are they adding to your agency at that point? Even if they're still making calls, are they a suck and a drain, or are they, actually adding value? And I think we kind of get trapped, like I said, in that desperate, like it's hard to hire people, so they're a warm body, I'll just keep them. And I did that and it was not successful. So I think learning from my mistakes, it's better for them to pay for their licenses up front. Now, post-pandemic's a little bit different, but I'm still making them be in on it 50-50. I haven't gotten far enough to test that out to see how effective it is, but I loved it, you guys, what I know.
That's right. So you really make them make that investment, and I think that's great. And so, here in just a second, we're actually going to pivot to Tim Linden. Tim is in the process of joining our call. And so we already did introduce Tim earlier, but if you just joined late, Tim is the founder, and he leads your 212 coach. Also is throwing the biggest agent party of the year right now in Nashville next week at the Agents Conference. And so, Tim, as soon as you're ready, you just let me know you're ready. You can just verbally chime in. As you start to, end up getting your audio ready to go, Tim. So just anytime you just chime in. But while we're waiting for Tim, I do want to ask you just one more question, Jen, about sort of your training process. I know you talked about developing some of those inner tools, but is there maybe a specific tool or coach or group that you've been a part of that was really beneficial in training? Is there anything that you could pinpoint to say, yep, I went out and got that outside resource and it was really helpful to me? Or was it all just sort of internally cooked?
So I get that question a lot. People are like, what like coaching, like outside stuff have you used? And honestly, I've never used any of the outside stuff. I've never paid for anybody else to train my team just because I was really concerned about what people were doing and if my team was doing it the right way. And I never paid anybody else for resources or anything like that. I came from outside State Farm. So I had an outside perspective, I think that was really good, but all of my processes and my training are really my own. Scott Greats has insurancy optimization and I like partner with him to provide content and stuff like that, but my team still hasn't gone through his program. I think maybe once I hire a new salesperson, I'll put them into his Rockstar team member training.
Yeah.
Just because I know that we have similar values, but I just have trust issues, I would say. So I really haven't used any like outside training, things like what Tim offers or Scott. There's so many that are floating around anymore, but I have never utilized those as tools for my team.
As tools for your team. Sure. Absolutely. And, I think it's important for you to know you and the town that you serve and your team members, right? To figure out what those right tools are. And it sounds like you said, hey, for my agency, I needed to be a little closer to it. So, hey, we have got Tim Linden on board. Hey, Tim, how are you? How are we doing? I know we've been working on some audio.
I'm good. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, it's coming in pretty good, but maybe talk a little more. Let's see if
Adam, if you want to use the chat box, you can hear me okay?
Yeah, I got you. Go ahead. Yeah, I think we're still.
The audio is not coming through on my end, so I don't know why that is. Can you hear me? I'm going to use the chat box.
Yeah, certainly. Go ahead and use that chat box. We actually can hear you, Tim. So here, let me send you a quick message. We can hear you. Okay, I think it may have booted him out. But hey, Tim, do you still hear us here? All right, so we're gonna work on getting Tim back here. I love our Zoom age, right? Our Zoom age, maybe we're getting so. Yeah, we're still breaking up a little bit, Tim.
Could he dial in?
Yeah.
Adam, I can hear anything through.
Yeah, so I think we still yeah, I mean, actually, we can bring you in that way as well. So, okay, so Tim, if you want to call my phone, I would love to bring you in over phone. I think we've got some audio issues there, but hey, while we're waiting for you, Tim, I do want to sort of move to retaining team members in our last kind of 15 minutes here, Jennifer, if that's okay. Hey, if you've been with us the whole time, thank you so much. We are in a call about recruiting, training, and
the dialing instructions, yeah.
Team members. So
if you can see the dialing instructions, that'd be great.
Yep. So hang on 1 second. So let me do something real quick. All right. And Jen, if you wouldn't mind unmuting yourself there, and we'll go from there. So let's talk about about kind of retaining team members. If I had to ask you, what's the number one factor of you having long tenure team members. Like, what would you say about that?
So like I said before, I think knowing what actually motivates them is really important. And a lot of us think that it's money, and it's not always money. And so I have a worksheet that when I hire my team, they fill that out. And so it ranges. So like some of the questions are, what are some of the work accomplishments or contributions that you would like to be recognized for? What type of recognition do you want? Which some people don't like to be publicly recognized. My service team member is absolutely petrified of being put in the spotlight. She hates it. So when I praise her privately. That's what she prefers. Whereas Amber, my sales team member, we use Front Runner. She loves to be in the Front Runner leaderboard. Like she was running at #1 across the whole country for the longest time, and like that was huge for her. And now like her goal is to be top 10. And so she's really big into big public recognition, not like in a boastful way, but like when I shout out to her, we're shouting out in a team meeting. I'm not doing it privately.
Sure.
Same thing. Amber likes money. Amber is very truly money motivated, whereas Sarah would prefer a Friday off or gifts or something like that. She's not really into money. And doing just acts of kindness. And, it's kind of funny. People talk about like your love languages. If you guys have ever like done that type of stuff in your marriage, it's not different with your team. Knowing what their love language is and like how they like to be doted on, I think is huge when you talk about retaining team members.
Oh yeah.
And
Totally.
when we plan our goals for the year, when we set up what we want to achieve for the year, I'm not the one that leads that conversation. My team does, because I think it's more important for my team to be bought in to what it is that we're doing and the goals that we're after than for me to dictate that to them. So it's more collaborative than it is a dictatorship. And I think they end up where I want them to be without me having to dictate that goal to them. So I'm like, hey, I show them, hey, this is what I would like to do. And then we do our fall planning. We spend a weekend and we have fun, but we do some business stuff and we just plan it out. But they lead that conversation. I'm not telling them this is what our goal is and this is what we're going to do. They tell me what their goal is and I help them drive toward that. So I sort of tell them what's possible and they tell me what they want to do and we go from there. So like Amber, when I hired her day one, how much money do you want to make?
Wow. Yeah.
And then we broke that down in Front Runner. So that's, I think, and I know this is a Front Runner call, but that's what drew me to Front Runner, is that I can individualize my team's goal. Like I would have paid any amount of money without any of the other features for just that alone, because everything else that was out there, it was, here's the office goal and you have to like basically split it up between your team members, and that was it. It wasn't individualized. It didn't care what my team wanted. So Amber has her goals within our office goals, and being able to utilize Front Runner for that has been huge, because she can see where she is on track for her own personal aspirations and for our office
Yeah.
goals. And that's huge for her, and that's what drives her, because she knows what the overall office goals are, but her personal goals exceed the office goals. So she doesn't really care what the office goal is. She cares about her own personal goal. And the
Wow.
same thing, for Sarah, she has some service driven like activity things. How many pivots is she getting and stuff like that, that she sets for herself. And we have set up in Front Runner for her to do. So in terms of motivating them that way, using Front Runner has been the biggest pivot in terms of my agency. That's really helped a lot.
Shout out. Like it. I like the shout out. I love it. No, thank you for that. And I'm telling you what I take away from that is it's almost like praise has to be individualized, right? It's, the character and what the love language of that team member. And that's how you praise them, and that's how you reward them. That's how you compensate them, and that's how they stick. So, hey, on that note, I do have Tim here on speakerphone. So Tim, if you don't mind kind of muting your audio on that side. And so I do want to bring Tim on my phone. And so we're highly technical here because I don't know our Zoom call in number, but hey, Tim, say hi to everybody.
Adam, thank you so much. Can everybody hear me? Hopefully okay.
Can you hear okay? And Jen, maybe, yep, thumbs up. Everybody hear Tim okay?
Thank goodness. Thank goodness. I can coach, I can run an office, but I can't do Zoom. I apologize for the technological difficulties. That's my fault.
No, that's all good. No, I mean, Tim, I really wanted to have you on this call as we encourage agents both now and 400 or 500, really on demand, right? So we've been talking, Tim, about, recruiting and training and, kind of retaining those team members, right? So as I say, recruit, train, and retain, do you mind, spending maybe 2-3 minutes, 4 minutes, 5 minutes talking about some things that are really helpful, some nuggets of information that you could pass on to our agents, about how to be better at that, or about, how to be more strategic about recruiting team members, training team members, and then building cultures that really retain them.
Okay, awesome. And thank you very much. Respectful of all of your time, I'm going to drop as much as I can in just a couple minutes. I will tell you this, in addition to coaching, I oversee 4 offices. We have 17 team members, and our team members range in tenure from 14 to about 14 months to about 27 or 28 years. And I will tell you this, finding the needle in the haystack is very difficult when it comes to recruiting. I've heard over the years, many people say to me, hey, you've got to be constantly recruiting. And the best time to recruit is when you're fully staffed, because you can see with different lenses when you're fully staffed. When you wait to recruit because somebody's left you're not looking through clear lenses. You're hiring out of desperation. You need somebody who's got experience. You're trying to hire somebody who's got a license already. So somebody once said to me, Tim, you've got to recruit 24/7, 365. Okay, so 24/7, 365. We have weekly goals in the agencies for auto, fire, life. We don't do health here, but auto, fire, life, and resumes. So just as important as getting a life policy each week, we're looking for candidates. We're not looking for the perfect person anymore. We've given up looking for that needle, because the needle is not in the haystack. We used to think the perfect person was out there, and we were constantly looking for that perfect person. But the perfect person does not exist, Adam. It just don't. In 25 years of coaching, the amount of turnover, do you know that the average team member stays with their agent for about 17 and a half months?
Wow.
So if I've got an agency with 2 team members, that means I'm always trying to get that replaced. And if I'm looking for that perfect person with when I'm desperate, it's just not going to happen. So our recruiting mantra now is, instead of looking for the perfect person, we're looking for talent. We're looking for people that do things perfectly, and we hire them to do things perfectly. All right. So, it's a little bit of a mind shift. It's a little bit of a change. It's obviously, we're in an advantageous spot because we've got some tenure here. We don't have need right now. But where we used to always be looking for licenses and experience, those are 2 things I can help somebody get. And we'll help somebody when we bring them on. We'll help them get a license, and we will help them get experience. Because you can always help people get that. When we're recruiting, we're looking for people that do things perfectly, people with high ethical, moral standards, who want to come to work, understand that we're not secondary. When they agree to work with us, they're working with us and not taking off for this and that. So a minute or 2 on recruiting. Those are some of the key points I would say to you. When it comes to training them, we used to, when we brought a team member on, we used to bring them on and say, here are your goals. We want you to do 24 autos. We want you to do 12 fire. We want you to do 3 lives. If we could market health here in our state, we would give them a goal of 2 health. And what we realized was giving them those goals at the start was overloading them. Now, as an agent, the agents listening here might think, well, that's nothing to do those. but the new team member is still trying to figure out directions on how to get to the office. They're still learning what the letters E, C, R, M mean. And they ask questions like, well, what do the letters N, E, C, H, O mean? And where we want to say, don't worry about it, their minds are so open, they're overloaded. So in terms of training, what we do is we give them or suggest a 6-month ramp up. And that 6-month ramp up essentially is in their first month, we expect them to write 4 autos and 2 fire, personally produce 4 autos and 2 fire.
Yeah.
The keywords are personally produced.
Mm.
In month number 2, we teach them the concept of personally producing multi-line households. So in month number 2, we want them to do 8 autos and 4 fire, personally produced. Now, of course, they could be doing added cars and added all that sort of stuff. In fact, the first thing we give a new team member is added cars. Any added car in the agency goes to the new team member because they've got a 100% closing ratio on added cars. And we want that team member from day one to experience success. We want them feeling like, oh my God, I can do this. I can do this. We never give them the raw, cold stuff because the closing ratio is so low, they get defeated and they get overwhelmed. So from the start, they get added cars. Month 1, it's 4 autos, 2 fire, personally produced. Month 2, it's 8 autos, 4 fire, personally producing multi-line households. So this is where we tell them, hey, do you know anybody who lives in a house with a 2-car garage?
Wow, yeah.
In month number 3, we teach them the importance of a system or a process. In month number 3, we expect them to do 12 autos, 6 fire that are personally produced. And we teach them the process of when you write a new household, you're going to do 6 of them with a 2-car garage. You meet with them in 30 days. So in month number 3, they're learning the importance of filling their calendar. This is where we first start mentioning the word appointment to them.
Wow, yeah.
So that in month number 4, it's 16 autos, it's 8 fire, and it's 1 life policy. That 1 life policy is going to come off of the appointment they set from month number 3. So in terms of training, first and foremost, there's a product out there, Team Member Trainer. We tell everybody to go use it. It teaches all the NECO steps, the ECRM steps. It's beautiful. It saves us time. It's not ours. It belongs to another agency. It's phenomenal. But we onboard them over 6 months. So the auto goes from 4 to 8 to 12 to 16 to 20 to 24. The fire goes from 2 to 4 to 6 to 8. So after month 6, they're at 12 fire. The life starts in month number 4. That's where they first start hearing about life insurance. So they're not overwhelmed in month number 1.
Yeah.
1 life in month 4, 2 in month 5, 3 in month 6. So by the 6th month, I've got somebody who's doing 24 autos off of the 12 homes they do. And because they follow a process, they do 3 life. And we found that way of training a team member we want them to be with us for the long term. And we've given up, we're sacrificing. I've got to hire this person and they've got to do it right now. I can't afford them to not produce. The truth is we can't afford to be turning them over every 6 months. So that's how we train them. And then I know I'm speaking too long, but you said okay. In terms of retention, if I can just say this.
Well, please do.
From a retention standpoint, we used to think it was all about money. But we've realized that the most precious asset that we all have is time. And as a business owner, as an agent, if any of us ever are having a bad day, we can just, go take, I like to say, I'm going to go take photos because we used to go with our Polaroids and take photos. But team members can't do that. So what we've done is we've just established a very simple program here. If our weekly commitments, they're not goals, if our weekly commitments are hit, and it's the first Friday of the month. So, Friday, September 3rd is the first Friday. Everybody leaves 1 hour and we close the office at 4 o'clock. If we hit all of our commitments in the second consecutive week of a month, so next Friday, the 10th, we close the offices at 3 o'clock. We close them 2 hours early. The third week, we close them 3 hours, close the offices 3 hours if they've hit their goals 3 consecutive weeks. So in the month of September, that 5th Friday of the month, they'll have the opportunity for us to close the offices at noon. And when you add that up, team members used to say, hey, can I bargain and take it on Tuesday instead of Friday? You either use it on Friday or you don't. We've got a team member, our morale is really high because they're not working 40 hours, and they're also not taking off on Tuesday mornings to go to the dentist because they know they've got that time on Friday. So that's been very key to us for retention.
Yeah. I've actually never heard that. I actually think that's really cool, is that our biggest asset is not money, it's time, right? I mean, time is the only irreplaceable thing. And so the reality is that you're compensating and retaining people because you're giving them time. I actually love that. And I actually loved everything that you said, everything from just a well-defined, well-oiled training and recruiting process. And really that's sort of the common thread that, everyone who's on the call, that we've heard both from Jennifer and from Steve and from Tim, that you're hearing 3 different angles here, but the common thread is what? The common thread is process, right? Is that they have a well-defined process, and every single process of these looks different, but there is a commitment to the process. And, you've probably heard this old adage, if you aim at nothing, what'll happen? You'll hit it, right? And so they clearly have targets that they're aiming after. I'm so glad that you guys have gotten to hear from all 3 of these today as we wrap this call up, right? Because the big idea here is process and continual evaluation and refinement of the process, and then being able to know what tools that you can use. And so quickly, before everybody drops off, I do want to do two things. One, I would love for Tim to give any closing comments that he has, but then I'd love, Tim, that Austin, if you might tell us a little bit about what's going on next week in Nashville. And then I want to pass it back over to Jennifer and, do about 30 seconds of closing comments from you, some final encouragements, and then we're going to let everybody go. But Tim, go ahead.
Adam, I can't talk on anything for 30 seconds, so I'm gonna deter over to Jennifer. I thank you for having me. If anybody wants any type of advice, I happily share with anybody that wants it. I'm a giver. I'll give you anything that you need. I know this is difficult. I'll say this. None of us were in human resources before we took the agency. And so we don't have the background. And our company, or your company, I should say, doesn't offer the tutelage. So when you combine the lack of background, the lack of experience, I didn't hear Steve. Steve Suggs, he knows I love him. He's amazing. I'm going to see him next week at a meeting we're doing in Nashville. My phone number is 908-907-3857. Anybody needs any assistance, just shoot me a text. I'll give you help you, because I've made all the mistakes, and I'd rather tell you the mistakes. So you guys, Adam, thanks so much for having me today.
Tim, absolutely. Hey, anytime, if you want to connect with Tim as well, you can go to his site, your212coach.com. That's your212coach.com. All right. I'm going to pass it over to Jennifer. Jennifer, any final comments as well? And by the way, you can also connect with Jennifer as well. Her alias is WTBK. I guess that's Whiskey Tango Bravo. I don't know what K stands for, but Kilo, yeah. So WTB and K as in, or keto, which I fail at all the time. So Jennifer, I'm going to pass it over to you for a few final comments.
Angela, you asked a question about the numbers. Also, I should have said, so for sales team members around goals in their first 3 months, so I take what their goal is. So Amber told me what she wanted to make. We split that up over a year, but in the first 3 months of her, I ramped it up. So I took 25% of her goal for the first month, 50% of her goal for the second month, and then 75%. So 25, 50, 75. And then by the 4th month, she'd be at her full goal. But there are a number of ways to do that. But I think I didn't want to limit somebody by my expectations of them. I wanted to see what she wanted to do and go from there. That way you weren't like killing it. If 25 was my goal, but she could do 50, then I never wanted to kind of temper her back from that. But everybody's different, and I think Tim's way of giving them wins in the beginning is super cool too. But yeah, I would say always be recruiting, honestly. Like, even if somebody's resume isn't super amazing, just talk to them, do a phone interview, because sometimes resumes aren't always telltale, but look for longevity. That's the biggest thing I would say. And anything that we do is trainable, but if in your gut or assessments or whatever you use, I've done it all. If somebody isn't a good candidate, don't hire them. No matter how desperate you are, you'll lose more money and time by hiring them and it flopping than you would by just gritting it out and doing it yourself. When the pandemic started, I was by myself for 3 months, and honestly, it was a great 3 months because it was very much a great time of clarity for me, and I got to do things the way that I wanted to do and rebuild from there. And sometimes there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing that.
With that. Awesome. Well, hey, I want to say a special thank you to Jennifer and Tim and Steve Suggs. Hey guys, thank you so much for your time. You guys are all busy with, advising a whole lot of people as well, So again, I want to share those links with you, salesmanage.com to connect with Steve Suggs, your212coach.com to connect with Tim Linden, and then alias WTBK to connect with Jennifer. And again, hey, family, I just want to say this from FrontRunner. Thanks again for trusting us with your agency. Thanks for joining us for 4 straight days of calls, 3 days of new feature rollouts. We hope you're loving them and just really excited about that. Remember, September 17th is our mobile app rollout. So we're super excited about that. So we've got the Android and iOS app coming out on that day. And then additionally, in the next month or so, FrontRunner's got some exciting partnerships that we're going to announce to you, where we're going to be partnering with you and actually helping bring to fruition some amazing trainings in your area. And so we're just really, really excited about that as well. So, okay, that's going to conclude our call. Again, Jennifer, thank you. Tim, thank you. Steve, who's gone. When you see us later, thank you all. Ooh, I can't tell you how grateful we are for your time. So, and everybody, hey, thanks so much for being a part of our live audience. This will be available on demand in the next 2 to 3 days once Tyrell gets it edited, and you'll be able to watch it for posterity. So, all right, everybody, have a really, really great rest of the day, and we will see you really, really soon. Take care, everybody. Thanks, Jennifer. Thanks, Tim.